This is CTV's W5. Here is Sandy Ronaldo.
Welcome to W5. Divorce. There's nothing pleasant about it. Families divided, spouses fighting each other, children in broken families. And now, for couples breaking up, a whole new battleground. It is called parental alienation, when one parent brainwashes the kids, trying to turn them completely against the other parent. It's a proxy war that can produce poisoned minds. As Paula Todd reports, family courts and social workers are grappling with how to make parents cooperate and to heal the children. It's not often easy.
In these family videos, it's plain to see Frank Bellissimo is crazy about his little girl, Lysandra. But caught up in a vicious custody battle, those cherished moments were few and far between.
Happy birthday to you.
At first, Frank says Lysandra's mother only let him visit his daughter for 2 hours every other week.
Happy birthday, my sweet cakes.
During the 2 hours that I was visiting my daughter, I wasn't allowed to touch her for the first hour or hour and 15 minutes.
Why?
She would sit me down on one chair, and she would sit my daughter in another spot, 8 or 10 feet away from me, and say, you can look at her, but don't hold her, don't touch her, don't kiss her, until I say so.
Oh, my baby, I love you.
Then, on one of those visits, when Frank scooped up Lysandra, insisting on holding her, his ex-wife called the police. He was charged with assault.
They handcuffed me, they put me in the police cruiser, and I couldn't believe what was happening. The police treated me like I was a criminal.
Frank was acquitted, but it was just the start of a nightmare cycle of false allegations he says his ex-wife made against him. Assault, threatening, even claims he didn't feed Lysandra.
Did you ever harm your ex-wife?
Never.
Did you ever harm your daughter?
No, never. Absolutely not.
But nasty divorce tactics didn't stop with allegations. Lysandra's mom was bad-mouthing Frank and urging her to lie to keep her from seeing her dad.
Who do you see?
Daddy.
Yeah, what's Daddy doing?
I don't know.
Smiling.
Well, my mom, I knew she didn't want me to see my dad because she would do certain things that would, like, put him down or make him seem like he was bad or that he was, like a criminal.
Come on, Sandra.
At some point, you must have believed some of it. I mean, you were a young kid.
Yeah, I did. If I wanted to go see my dad and she would say, no, we have to do something this weekend, then she would just be like, okay, if you want to go see your father this weekend, then you're not allowed seeing your friends for 2 weeks. And you can't go on the computer, and you can't do anything.
So you were punished for wanting to see your father?
Yeah, basically.
Experts call it parental alienation, a persistent campaign by one parent to poison a child's relationship with the other parent. Bad-mouthing, lying, preventing visits, even punishing a child for showing the other parent any affection. In extreme cases, an alienating parent can actually convince a child to reject the other parent altogether.
Have you ever had a child who'd been the victim of parental alienation that you...
Child psychologist Marty Mackay considers Frank and Lysandra a textbook example of parental alienation. Lysandra came to see her for a year. In this recent assessment, Mackay writes, I had concluded your mother was attempting to alienate you from your father and had attempted to involve me and other persons and agencies in assisting her in confirming accusations against your father.
She was coached to lie about her father. Some of those lies were ones that had criminal implications and child welfare implications. So when a child is coached to lie, that's in my view, it's abusive.
But Lysandra grew up, started thinking for herself, and at 13, announced to her mother that she wanted to live with her dad and her baby stepbrother.
She said, okay, you can move in with him, but you can't take any of your clothes. You can't take your laptop. All you can bring is a little backpack. So what I had to do, like the only thing she would let me do was I had to put on all my clothes. So I put on like 5 layers of pants and like 10 layers of sweaters and shirts. And I could just bring a backpack of like some of my stuff. And that's all she would let me do. And I also brought like my cat. I had to carry it all to the end of like the street, and it's a long street because he's not allowed to come to our house, so I had to walk all the way there, like with my cat in my hand and like 10 layers of clothing on. And, yeah.
Now, at 14, Lysandra is living at her father's, doing all the usual teenage things. On her laptop, hanging out with friends, but now it's her mum she doesn't see. W5 contacted Lysandra's mother, who turned down an on-camera interview, claiming this is headed to court and insisting that she is the parent who's being alienated.
And do you feel that what your mom did was alienate you from your father?
Yeah, I do.
What do you think about a young person like you being put in a situation like that?
I think it's just unbelievable. I think every child should have the option to go see their mother or father and have a healthy relationship with them.
Across the country, in Vancouver, another parent knows the pain of alienation. Pamela Richardson's marriage dissolved when her little boy Dash was a toddler.
He was a delight. He was a lovely little boy, and he loved his mother and his father equally, as all children do.
But Pamela's ex-husband Peter waged a savage custody war, using Dash as a weapon. A war he won, despite having problems with alcohol and drugs that affected his parenting.
How did he wind up with sole custody of Dash?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I guess I can say, in a nutshell, he was a very well-known criminal lawyer in the court system in Vancouver. And he was known by all the judges because judges are lawyers first, remember? And he knew the system.
So Dash lived with his father, but Pamela was supposed to get to see Dash half the time. Still, Peter got away year after year with denying Pamela visits with her son.
I wouldn't see Dash for, a number of months, and not without me trying, not without me doing all the classic things that parental alienated parents do: cookies on the doorstep, faxes, phone calls, notes, trying to see him at friends' houses, you name it. You do everything you possibly can to try and keep that thread of a relationship alive.
And time after time you would go back to court to try to enforce your access. And how valuable was that paper that said you were entitled to see your son?
It was worth nothing.
What's the longest time you went without seeing your son?
There was a period of 2 years, and I added up the hours, and it came to 24. 2 years.
That's an hour a month. What did you miss?
2 years of his life. Illness, struggles with homework, parent-teacher nights. I was also not allowed at the school or to visit the doctor or dentist with him.
As the years passed, Pamela realized her once carefree little boy, the son who loved times with his mum, was falling victim to what she calls a kidnapped mind, with too few moments like this, turning anxious and nervous with a father who was poisoning him against his mother.
I used to phone and phone and phone, and for any parent that goes through this, and if they're listening now, I'm sure they can appreciate how difficult emotionally it is to keep trying, to not give up, to not walk away.
He stopped calling you mom. He called you terrible things like bitch and whore, and did it frequently.
Well, there was a lot of abusive language.
What do you think it would take to take a little boy who loved his mom to become this rude, abusive child who refuses to see you?
What parents capable of this kind of abuse do is they use custody as an opportunity to isolate the child and program them.
Dash was a teen now, alienated and isolated from his mother for years. He began to spiral down, failing grades, skipped school, and signs of depression.
Comments like, if I was alone, I'd jump out of the school window. But he was out skateboarding till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And it seemed like there was no control, no supervision. And it frightened me to death.
What would Peter do?
He would deny it. He's fine. He's fine. The only thing that does bother him, he'd say, is his weekend's visits with you.
Things got worse. Alcohol, drugs, and brushes with the law. Pamela kept up her fight for Dash, even finally winning custody. But Dash, completely alienated by now, stayed with his dad.
He was living with his father, but apparently the rumor was that he wasn't living there either. He was living in a car, and there were altercations and fistfights now between Peter and his very sadly unhealthy, emotionally, tragically damaged young man.
On January the 1st, 2001, the once joyful little boy came here to the Granville Bridge in Vancouver in the middle of the night. And at the age of 16, jumped, arms widespread, to his death.
Did he leave any sort of a note?
No. He felt very alone. And he was alone. And he was alone when he died.
Pamela Richardson lives every day with thoughts of the son she lost, a son who jumped to his death from this bridge in Vancouver.
You never recover from any child dying.
Dash took his own life after years of emotional abuse, the victim of parental alienation, a campaign by his father Peter to turn him against his mother in a battle over custody.
One thing I did know is that I'd given it everything I had. And more. So there was no guilt.
No guilt, but motivation to save other children from the same tragic fate. So Pamela wrote a book, and she wants the family court system to take notice and start doing something about cases of alienated children like Dash.
This is extreme. And this was something that was in the courts many, many times. They had an opportunity to do something, and they didn't.
Order all rise.
But at least this one judge in Toronto, Family Court Justice Harvey Brownstone, does pay attention.
First matter's ready, Your Honor.
And often, he doesn't like what he hears from feuding parents.
While there may be some therapeutic benefits to coming to court and venting and telling a judge how much you were hurt by the other parent's infidelities or bad conduct, at the end of the day, we're looking at parenting capacity, parenting skills. We need to look at how couples are going to reinvent themselves from ex-partners to co-parents.
In family court disputes, legally, the child has the rights and parents have obligations, period. But Brownstone says there are too many cases of battling parents who think and act like it's the other way around. He warns there could be a price to pay.
Parents who are on a campaign to destroy the child's relationship with the other parent could lose custody. And in extreme cases, courts have changed custody to the other parent.
So Brownstone wrote a book, too, about the legal tug-of-war that sticks children in the middle. A tug-of-war that can have deadly consequences.
This is real. This is child abuse.
And the risk of letting this continue is what?
More deaths.
Tragedy is too often the end of the story for children in high-conflict custody battles. But now, south of the border here in Boston, Massachusetts, 2 Harvard-trained psychologists are trying a radical new method to rehabilitate warring parents, all in the hopes of writing a happier ending for kids caught in the crossfire of divorce.
If we do this as a model, people are going to be coming to Boston for it.
Psychologists Robin Deutsch and Peggy Ward turned their decades of experience with custody cases into an inspired plan. They took over this summer camp in Vermont for a week and brought bad-mouthing, alienating parents together with their kids, hoping to teach them how to parent after divorce.
We knew that if we couldn't bring the whole family together, that we couldn't really make progress. Kids do best when both parents are involved in their life.
That is the message people come away with. And if we can do anything to keep our child out of the middle of our conflict, our child will do much better.
So you guys want to tell your dad about school today?
Yeah, how was school?
This might look like an average family sitting down to dinner, but it's far from it. Fran Bisi and Chris Cerconi are divorced. Just 2 years ago, they couldn't bear to be in the same room. They were on opposite sides of a savage divorce and custody battle, filled with suspicion, rage, and all-out hatred.
Yeah, one time I hated her. I mean, I absolutely couldn't. I just wanted her dead.
Chris had his reasons. Fran accused him of the worst imaginable crime, sexually assaulting their oldest child.
It wasn't just me, it was my entire family. She leveled allegations against my mother, my father, my sisters, brothers, family, cousins. Got really outrageous.
They have 3 days to
But Fran had seen what she believed were worrying signs in her oldest son, Chris. Signs that fed into her deepest fears.
So when this was going on and you were worried that Chris was being sexually abused, what was the tension like between you and your ex-husband?
Oh my God, he hated me. I was like the big mother bear, like guarding the door, not letting my ex-husband near my kids, because I was just wanted to protect them, to keep them safe. And yet he at the other hand was just like, these are my kids, I want to see them. I have every right to see them.
Yeah, it goes down to the ocean.
It was all-out war, and Chris had to fight to see his kids. Until divorce camp. And then everything changed. Fran learned her accusations were unfounded. Now they've dumped the titles of alienator and alienated and talk about co-parenting instead.
Whichever side you're on, whether you're the alienated or the alienator, you've got to come to the grips that it can't be about how I feel or getting back at the other one.
That's something Tori could have told her parents all along.
Well, what it's so painful is that your mom and dad get separated, and they don't like each other, but you like both, and it's kind of like a contest who you like better.
I feel that there's no challenge. You love each parent equally.
And you do, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Tori, what was your biggest fear inside that came out at camp?
My biggest fear is that I was the only one going through this divorce. And what made it so fun is that I really got to know people that were going through the same situation.
A lot of growing up happens at summer camp, and it turns out divorce camp is no different, no matter what your age.
I think I'm a better mom because I'm happier and I'm not trying to create any wedges between my kids and their dad.
The kids also figured out a thing or two at camp.
I just want to say this to all children who are going through a divorce that's really painful. I just really want to say that if they don't want to be together, then you can't make them be together.
If the lesson this little girl learned at camp is that her parents can't be together, the lesson her parents learned is that they still need to work together.
I think that that's part of the legacy of divorce camp, is that it makes you focus on the common ground, the common goals that you have. I think that, and it's generally, it is the kids. And unfortunately, our goals are the same. We're just doing it on separate paths.
Lysandra Bellissimo, who still lives every day with the sting of alienation, wishes more warring parents would get that message.
Like, it's not worth putting your kid through that. I don't think anyone should want to put their kid through the pain that, like, I've been through or many other kids have been through. So I think they should, like, stop and get help.
By the way, those two psychologists in Boston hope to offer their camp for divorced families across the United States and are also talking with experts in Canada to set up a divorce camp